I just wanted to reflect a bit on just a bit of what's been said and put it in perhaps into a historical and worldwide perspective a bit, given the fact that there are people here from all over the world, well, almost all over the world. And we remember that, of course, 200 years ago, in this part of the world, not in the developing world, society chose to deal with people in a very different way than with mental health problems than the rest of society. And that in most of the world, in fact in 96% countries of the world, has not changed at all. So in an international sense, in terms of the progress that's been made in the UK, is quite significant in terms of, particularly in terms of de-hospitalization, which is different to de-institutionalization. Because in terms of what was remarked upon, is that the three important things to bring about that change from the way in which society believed that people with mental health problems would never recover, and therefore they needed to be taken out of society, which still prevails. So that changing that belief system, changing that thinking, but also changing the practice, not just in terms of the services or the practices or the clinical interventions, but how they are delivered to people, still prevails as the dominant model, which is that services or practices are given to people, and take it or leave it in some places, and particularly in some areas of the world. We have done a lot to change the system, and perhaps you could argue that we started from changing the system in a major way, but have we changed significantly the practice, or have we changed significantly the thinking? And I think that's the challenge, although we made significant progress in this part of the world, that we still have. And perhaps moving to a recovery-oriented approach and all that goes with that, and a whole life health system, is perhaps much more difficult now that we've closed the institutions. Because a lot of people think that, and it was a great effort, and it's been significant in terms of what it's achieved, but may have been easier, actually, to what we have to challenge in the future. So, for instance, our colleagues that are hearing this from Malaysia, where they still have institutions, and they're struggling, Abdul is struggling to bring about change in a system which is incredibly difficult to change. But there's hope and opportunity from coming at the bottom-up approach, if you like, of changing the thinking and changing the practice, although because it's much more difficult perhaps to change the structure of institutions from the top down. So we can come at this from different ways. For instance, in a longitudinal WHO study of schizophrenia and people that recover from schizophrenia that's been done over the last 10 or so years, it shows that in parts of the developing world, recovery rates for schizophrenia are much better than in Europe or America. And then part of the reason for this is the social capital that people have. It's not the medication or the treatment that they're given. It's actually the social capital they have. And in some parts of the world, if you don't do something to work, you'll starve to death. So people have to work, whatever that is. But also that effect about their people's self-esteem and how they're regarded in society, that they are contributing to society, whatever that contribution is. And that shows that moving towards a whole life, whole systems approach is so important. We learn the lessons from what's actually been achieved in the developing world, as much as they can learn some of the lessons and perhaps some of the mistakes from what we've done. So let us, from that thought, just think of this on a global level, because we're all in it together. And one last reminder is we have a huge responsibility in the UK and in France and in other countries, because we exported the institutional model to all over the world.